Let's talk through how many WCAG success criteria we can rely on automated accessibility scans to reliably flag. That number is 7 of 55 WCAG 2.2 AA success criteria. I wrote about this in a blog post this weekend titled Accessibility Scans Reliably Flag 13% of WCAG criteria. So let's get into the post. Here's where the higher percentages come in. Sometimes you'll have a study or a blog post that states that the number of accessibility issues that are flagged by a scan it's a much higher percentage. And it depends on what you use the base here. So I'm using the WCAG success criteria, but where a company might use, let's say, a collection of 100 accessibility audits, of these audits, we found that X number of issues, X percentage of issues could have been flagged by a scan. So that can be one source of the higher percentages. There's also just the tendency to overinflate what scans can flag. But then there's this 45% 2.2 AA success criteria are partially detectable. So that's why the percentage is always uneven, is that scans can flag parts of many issues. It's just not conclusive. So here, the percentage breakdown I have to start this article is that 13% can be conclusively flagged or mostly flagged, right? We still need to review, but largely accurate. The scans are largely accurate with 7 to 55 issues. 55 issues are scans can help us with part of the success criteria, but not all. And then 42% of the success criteria are just going to be missed altogether. So just we can't use scans for those success criteria. And this is topical because I've been talking about a lot of having an audit-based platform and actually working from an audit report and not scan results, because scan results are not conclusive and they're so skewed that if we're working towards 100% score on a scan, we're not tracking progress to full WCAG conformance, which in this space, most consumers, most clients are interested in full WCAG conformance, whether it's 2.1 or 2.2. They don't want to work towards 100% score on a scan. Now, scans can be valuable for practitioners. They can help you find issues or prevent issues from ever happening, right? So there's a place for automated scans, but it's not the place that they're being positioned for in the market. Again, scans are for practitioners. They are not for your average client who just wants to make their website WCAG 2.1 AA conformant. They can use a scan, they can uncover several accessibility issues, but they ultimately still need the audit. And so that's what I've been talking about for so many videos. And that's why I keep harping on the fact that you need to have an audit-based platform. And what we see in the market is a consensus around the scan-based platform. So let's continue on with this article. And then so I've got here a table of all of the 2.2 AA success criteria. And I can't remember whether or not I marked I think it's 4.1.1. No, I kept this one in here. So 4.1.1 was marked obsolete, but I did note this. So 4.1.1 obsolete in 2.2. So the backwards compatible rule was broken there. But for the most part, it doesn't really affect anything. But this is with validation errors. But if you're interested in WCAG 2.1 AA, then it's included. But this is probably not going to be anything that's going to prevent conformance. But anyway, that's a side point. The point that I'm making, though, is that many issues are partially detectable. So the part of the success criterion, we can have automation flag for part of it, just not all of it. So again, we get back to the point where we can't rely upon scans. They can help us find several accessibility issues, but it's not conclusive. And so because it's not conclusive, scans don't provide value for most consumers, because the consumer in this market is after full WCAG conformance. So I just got this through. I have this table. I'm not going to read through it all, but let's just take the example of the first success criterion, because this is the classic one and it just illustrates the point. So 1.1.1 non-text content. And I have here is it's partially detectable. And the explanation is a scan can identify if there's a missing alt attribute. So that's helpful. But it cannot evaluate whether the alt text is accurate, meaningful, or appropriate. And so someone's going to have to review that, because if let's just say that you wanted to pass the automated scan and you could just write in alt text for every single alt attribute, that was your alt attribute value, you would pass the automated scan, but that would not make your images accessible. So you would fail 1.1.1 because you have to have a descriptive alt text that relays the meaning of the image. So partially detectable, right? In a way, we can see how it would help us direct to any issues with our images, right? But it's not going to be conclusive. We can't rely upon it. So we come back to the audit because we still need the audit. We still need that human review. So this is what happens. Some issues we can get some value out of scans, but it's not to what the market generally portrays. The market likes to position scans something that is a part of this process. But what ends up happening for a lot of people is they buy the scan, they use the scan, and then they still need the audit, right? So it's you have to know exactly how you need the scan and why you need the scan, and whether when you understand the scan's role, whether it provides value, especially relative to when you're buying a platform that is scan based, which most are. So let's just scroll down this blog post. I'll see if I want to add anything else. There's a section here on how scans work, what scans do well, and then here we've got the classic example of alternative text. And then where scans do well is with when there is a defined rule set that can be where a scan can state exactly when an issue arises because of something specific that exists in the code. So again, I've broken the different categories into mostly accurate detection, partially detectable, which is 45%. So that's a lot of success criteria that are partially able to be flagged, but just not fully able to be flagged. And then we have not detectable. And then so I have a section on scans versus audits. And then what we're seeing now too is AI is helping scans evolve. So scans can add AI can add intelligence to scans, which is going to be helpful again for those practitioners that understand how the role of scans and what AI is helping with and where it is still limited. So AI can AI can add intelligence to the equation, and really what's going to happen is scans are going to become super scans now because there's going to be intelligence along with the rule sets. The problem is that we're still going to be short of full conformance even with the added intelligence. So it is going to take scans to be more reliable on certain success criteria, but we're still not going to be able to replace the audits for quite some time. What we're seeing now is AI is going to be able to visually look at let's just use the example of a website. It's going to be able to gather more context. We've already seen that with AI, it can look through things. It's not just looking through code and determining whether the code is a certain way or whether it's not. It's actually making complex evaluations and returning back helpful suggestions. But again, if you're a client who is looking for full conformance, you are going to want you're going to need that scan still because AI is not going to be enough. What you will see with all of the responsible companies who are involved in AI is they're going to state this is not conclusive, it can contain errors. And I think that's another part of this is that AI can make very fundamental errors and actually surprising errors because you would think AI would be pristine when it comes to logic. That's where it thrives. But AI still makes mistakes. And even when we look at these new models like ChatGPT 5 and then Claude 4.1, and we look at the new LLMs, and then of course we have agentic AI coming as well. But when we look at them, they're still prone to very basic mistakes and very fundamental mistakes. And what happens is if you're not familiar with why something would be a mistake or how a mistake could be made, or if you can't evaluate the results from an AI scan, then you're still going to have missing accessibility issues. You won't reach full conformance. And so this is not to say that AI scans won't be helpful. You just have to know where they can help, how they can help. Again, it's for practitioners. When we look at a lot of accessibility tools, they are for practitioners. They make practitioners more efficient. So what you will see is the marketplace, the service providers will become more efficient. But for the general consumer, the general organization who simply wants to make their digital assets WCAG conformant, most scans, most other tools aren't what they need. They need an audit. Now, as they become more fluent in accessibility, then some of these tools may become a fabric of their organization. We've already seen this with other tools. So, like, just a simple example would be color contrast, or we could also see, of course, with closed captioning. I think one huge change is going to be with audio descriptions, because previously audio descriptions were very difficult, very cumbersome. AI, I think, is going to provide a lot of value when it comes to audio descriptions. But when it comes to making sure that everything is taken care of, we still need, what we'll see is, and I haven't talked about this, I've written about this, what we'll see is a hybrid automation. And I've used that term before. I did the one reason I hesitate with that term is because people think automation and they think everything is taken care of. And we've seen the abuse of the word automation in digital accessibility. But with hybrid automation, what you can have there is where the process is automated to the extent it can be, and then the results are reviewed. So you still have the human component. It's a review component, and it's not going to be as extensive. And so, again, we'll see efficiency, costs will go down. So that will be good, but it's not, again, you still want to have the expert involved, even if it's just for a brief stint, even if it's just for review, because we want to make sure that we have reached a point where we can definitively say that we are WCAG conformant, or we have reached a point where we can definitively say that this page or this component is WCAG conformant. What we don't want to do is we don't want to be uncertain, especially when it comes to when we see the serial website accessibility litigation in the United States, when it comes to the European Accessibility Act and the different monitoring authorities. Some of them might be very, very strict. And if you're relying upon AI or just letting AI take care of everything, AI is going to be able to improve accessibility so much, but you don't want to let the technology and the hype get ahead of the actual reality. So it is very impressive, but still, in 2025, I don't think this will. It's evolving rapidly, but even in 2026, you're still going to see more of a hybrid approach when AI becomes even more capable. It will still be the hybrid approach. The cost will go down, though. The time will go down. Everything will be so much more efficient. But, anyways, I've gone into a separate part of this. The point is that when we're reliant upon automated scans, they are very limited. And this just goes to show you how limited they are. In this next section in the blog post, I have scans are tools for practitioners. Think of it as practitioners. Leave the accessibility specialization to either practitioners or people in your in-house team that know exactly how to make use of the tools. If you don't know the reason you're buying a scan, exactly why, like not the reason you were told to buy the scan, but like why you need the scan, then you shouldn't be buying it.